Mission Control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial Spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire. Missile away.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Celestis broadcast. The only difference with this broadcast and any of the other broadcasts we've ever done in the entire time that we've been doing this is that we're actually live. We're live at one of our events. This is our Ascension Flight, and we are here live at Cocoa Beach. Where the hell are we, Charles? Here in Cocoa Beach, where we are surrounded as we speak in this room with a lot of the families of the participants. Before we do, I'd like to give a nice round of applause for the people that have journeyed all the way from wherever they came from. Please clap and give yourself a nice round of applause. Thank you for being this. This is a special broadcast, like I mentioned before, because we've never done anything like this before. We've never been live, and here we are right on site. And of course, with my incredible boss, Charles Chafer, right here in the room and on camera with us right now. We have updates for our people that will be watching us, watching the memorial service, watching the live launch, live on our show here. And Charles wants to just pretty much run down a lot of the information that's going to be happening during the next 3 days, next 2.5, we can call it now. Charles, how you doing, boss?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Mark. And welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have a studio audience for one of these space
I cannot hear any of the broadcasts. I don't know if you can hear me at all.
Face up there, bear with us.
I got you, Mark. Could not hear anything from Charles.
Okay, Don, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Interesting. Yeah, I hear you fine. I'm waiting to get. He's not holding a mic. Who's watching? Oh, Kobe, let me know if you can hear us at some point. But this is a new one, so guys, I'm not sure what's going on.
Take
here.
it away. You can interview Emily and Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charles, I hear you now. When they switched to you just talking, Charles, I lost your voice.
Okay.
Now I have you both again.
Okay, Charles, you can't hear Charles.
Can you hear me, Don?
I can hear you now. When you were talking and featured on the screen, I couldn't hear anything. I lost it.
You know, I think that's just Mark controlling the verbosity here.
You know, you got my vote on that.
Much like space flight, there's always problems, but it seems to me that the chat room is actually saying that they can. They're saying that the chat room is actually saying that they can hear us now. So we have audio, so go for it.
I won't start over again, I promise. I will say welcome friends and family members who are here, friends and family members who are around the world waiting for the launch on Wednesday. We take a special pride and a special care in what you have given us, the responsibility that you've given us. And with that, I think let's try to bring Emily in to do a rundown of the events and activities. And if not, we know we've got Don and we can go right to him.
All right, I'm looking for Emily and she has not appeared as of yet. So I don't know if she has any problems up in her room or not, but we will continue to keep.
Such is the case with live broadcasts. Don, it's great to see you again. We're looking forward to you joining us tomorrow for our memorial service. And really, if you would tell us a little bit about your career, not a lot because we've told everybody all about you, but what brought you to be an astronaut, I'm sure is the same thing in many instances as why loved ones are on board. Fascination with space, desire to go there. The difference is, of course, you've done it. So give us just a little bit of an overview of what it's like to be in space and to get that overview effect of Earth from space.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. It's great to be with everybody tonight, and I look forward to being there in person with you tomorrow. I wanted to be an astronaut since I was about 6 years old. And when I was 6, on May 5th, 1961, the United States launched the first American astronaut to space. And I watched that, at my elementary school on a small black and white TV. And as soon as our astronaut had made it to space, I just remember that moment so clearly. I was sitting there saying, I want to do that. So to go into space was always a lifelong dream of mine. And when I hear from people that, oh yeah, they've always had that dream since they were, just a small child, I get it, because that's the way I was. It took me many, many years and a lot of hard work through school before I finally got into the astronaut program. It took me 4 times applying to NASA for their astronaut selections. But in 1990, I finally made it into the astronaut program. I started a 4-year training program for my first flight. And in 1994, July of 1994, I had my first of 4 missions to space. And my first one was aboard Space Shuttle Columbia. And I'll never forget that moment. I'm laying on my back in sunny Florida. 6 seconds before liftoff, I hear the main engines coming up to full power. Everything starts shaking. And right at the moment of liftoff, I felt this shove in my back, as if somebody had their hand right in the middle of my back, just pushing me up into the sky. And I knew that I was on my way. And having dreamed of this since I was 6, and I was 39 when I was experiencing this launch, when I felt that push, I had my helmet on, visor down. Nobody in the world could hear me, and I'm screaming inside my helmet, Yahoo, let's go, because here was the dream of my life taking place right in front of my eyes. Such an amazing experience. 8.5 minutes later, the engine shut down. It's perfectly quiet, and I was in space. And I knew at that moment, like I accomplished my dream, my childhood dream. It's really an incredible feeling, to do a feat like that.
That's amazing. We at Celestis have a long history with the astronaut corps. Not everyone knows that really the reason that we're here today is because my former boss, Deke Slayton, one of the original Mercury astronauts, when he was in charge of our rocket company, was approached by a group called the Celestis Group of Melbourne, Florida, with the idea of launching cremated remains into space. I got to tell you, when Deke called me up, I was our Washington rep at that point and said, Charlie, you need to go get approval from the FAA for a mission. I said, sure, Deke, what are we going to do? And he told me, and my initial reaction was,
Hey, Charlie, I've lost sound again.
Hey, Don, can you hear me? Oops, let me unmute you. Don, you still there? Ooh.
I can hear you, and I can hear Charles now, but when you switch just to Charles or to Charles and I on the screen, then I lost Charles.
Don't switch.
Don't switch. It's the magnetic personality, I think, but you're all good. Charles, you want to repeat your question?
Well, Don, I want to paraphrase it so that we don't bore everybody to death, but I was saying that we have a long history with the astronaut corps, beginning with Deke Slayton, who was really fundamentally the founder of Celestis, and we've since flown Bill Pogue, we've flown Gordon Cooper, we've about to fly Phil Chapman, and we've flown the family of Nicole Stott. And my question to you was, and my statement was, even though you've flown in space, astronauts choose a memorial space flight for their final journey. And so my question to you was, what was your reaction when you first heard about Celestis and what we were doing before probably you even met any of us?
Yeah, I've heard of your company for many, many years, and I just thought it's an amazing opportunity, for people to fulfill that lifelong dream of orbiting the Earth, of going to space. I just think it's a fantastic opportunity. It makes it approachable. It makes it doable, for the average person.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a professional astronaut to orbit the Earth. It's available for everybody. So I think you're providing a incredibly valuable and very personal service to everybody.
Well, thank you. We feel the same way. And, I've spent the afternoon telling people, okay, when we launch, don't look at the launch through your camera lens. We'll take plenty of pictures. You can have those from us. You need to really feel it. And I found it so meaningful for you to describe those first 8 minutes of flight and thinking about, I have a friend named Frank White who wrote a book called The Overview Effect, and it describes the changes that astronauts go through as they view the Earth from space. He recently wrote an article where he says the people that are viewing a Celestis launch have sort of a same thing, different version, and it's because they know they have an intimate connection to what's going on. It's not just, pardon me, watching a few highly trained civil servants flying into space. It's their loved ones. It's them. There's a reality to that that's really hard to put into words, but I think you did such a great job of describing your experience. And that's what I want the folks here and the folks that are viewing around the world to understand, that there's two components to a Celestis mission. There's destination, where are we going? But there's also experience. What am I feeling at that point of liftoff? And again, I think for you, we're so happy that you've agreed to come and talk to folks tomorrow, because that makes it real. So we're really looking forward to you coming, and we'll have 160 Don Thomas fans at our memorial service tomorrow. I can only hope that you've got the stamina to shake a few hands and take a few photos with the folks that are really pleased that you're taking the time to show up with us.
And Charlie, I never leave an event. I never, ever leave as long as there's questions or a hand to shake or an autograph to sign or a question to answer, unless I got an airline flight that I got to get on. And I don't have that tomorrow night. So I will be happy to stay there as long as anybody has questions or just want to talk about, the experiences that I had. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Hey, Don, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. In your career, at a point now where we're doing a lot more commercial space flights, did you ever consider this service as being something that could be a reality to anyone? Did you ever, in your young life, in your career as an astronaut, think that this might in fact become a reality to anyone out there?
No, I never thought this was a possibility until I first heard of your company. And I think I first read about it in Aviation Week. I used to get that magazine and read it. And I first learned of the idea when you were proposing it. And it's like, wow, that is a great idea. A fitting tribute, I think, for many individuals who share that passion for space and the dream of reaching space one day. So I never thought it would be possible. So I'm so excited that not only is it possible, but you're making this routine. This isn't the first mission for you. So I congratulate you on everything that you've been doing.
So we don't have 160 Don Thomas fans here with us tonight, but we've got a few. Let me ask if anybody has a question they want to ask the Ohio astronaut out there. Colby? Got a question?
He's from Ohio, and he has to answer this.
Oh, wow. Is that what they do?
OHIO.
That's incredible. We brought Emily up on the screen since we finally got her connected. Emily, can you say a few words so we can see if we can hear you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yep, we got you now.
Okay.
So it's a great time, Emily, if you want to give us the Emily eye view of what's going on here at scenic Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, and the events that are coming up the next couple of days. And if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll call on you.
Oh, well, I'm very excited to be here. I have a little bit of feedback, but I'll try to work with it.
Yep, I'm trying to work it too.
Okay. I guess I'll get started. So we're all here for the SpaceX Falcon 9 Transporter 5 flight. It's a rideshare flight, and it's the our payload is the Omnitech Barasat satellite, and it's being carried into space by a momentous Vigoride, I believe that's what it's called, carrier. And basically what's going to happen is the satellite's going to enter a sun-synchronous orbit, and that's a type of polar orbit. So I won't get too into orbital mechanics because everybody's going to fall asleep here, but it's a type of polar orbit. And the cool thing about Celestis is we have satellite trackers, and once the orbit has been established, we'll be able to track it, and we'll be able to, and our families and friends all over the world, not just anybody who's checking out our website will be able to check that out. We also have 4 other spacecraft in low Earth orbit right now that you could just go on the website, click on our satellite tracker, and it's right behind Charles and Mark. So you guys can just check it out right now. It's really cool. So what's going to happen on Wednesday is we're going to see an awesome launch it's going to happen at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, SLC 40, which was one of the old Titan pads back in the day, and it has a history spanning back to as early as 1965, which is just incredible. It used to launch Titans, and now it launches SpaceX Falcon 9 rockets. So it has a really long, rich heritage. And on Wednesday, we're going to see a Falcon 9 launch from it at 2:25 p.m. That's 2:25 p.m. Eastern, which is 18:25 Greenwich Mean Time for y'all in England over there. And and the really cool thing that I'm personally looking forward to about this launch, I mean, space launches are always incredible. I'm a Florida native, so I've seen probably thousands of space launches. The thing I'm really excited about this launch is we're going to see a landing at landing zone 1 in Cape Canaveral, and it's going to seem really close. I've been told it's very loud. There's sonic booms, and it's going to be awesome. So you all just better prepare for that. I'm excited about that because I've never seen one before. I haven't really seen them, but I've been to SpaceX launches where the landing is on a drone ship. It's a few hundred miles away, so you don't really get to see much of anything, but this is going to be right near us, and it's going to feel like it's coming right over our heads, which I think is awesome personally. I'm not scared at all about it. So you guys are going to love that, I think. And really, though, this is my first, personally, this is my first Celestis event as a full-time staff member. And I'm really just honored to share it with all of you and to pay tribute to your loved ones in such a significant and wonderful way. I mean, I've always admired Celestis from, even before I came with the company. I admired what they did. They have a long, rich heritage, not just in memorial space flights, but just commercial space flight. If you go back to the days of Space Services, Inc. in the 1980s, Charles Chafer, sitting right over there, he was the original person doing this. I mean, if we talk about, I'm not trying to cast anything on, I'm not trying to cast anything, on Elon or, Elon or Jeff Bezos, but SSI were the first people to be doing this. So this company has an incredible heritage. So I'll wrap it up. I think I just got the wrap it up music.
That's great.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
So, Don, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear.
I'd love you to give us your view of the contrast, if any, that you see between the shuttle era of reusability and the current era of reusability. Have we reinvented the wheel? Are we moving forward? Just be really interested in your view of that.
Yeah, a lot of people think Elon Musk invented reusability, but we did it in the shuttle program. Space Shuttle Discovery that's at the Air and Space Museum about an hour from my house here, that flew in space 39 times. And our solid rocket boosters, the big white rockets on either side, those would drop off. They would land in the Atlantic Ocean about 250 miles off the coast of Florida, and we'd gather them up and reuse them as well. Elon Musk does it a lot more elegantly. So we have taken huge steps. I've watched one of the first landings of his first stage back at Cape Canaveral. I happened to be at dinner in Port Canaveral. It was a night launch, and I watched that first stage coming down. It was probably 10 or 12 miles away, and just about when it was about to touch down, there was a huge explosion, which I thought, oh, this thing must have crashed. I couldn't see it because it was just behind the trees. But what I was listening to, what that big explosion was the sonic boom of that stage when it was up a lot higher, maybe 20 miles up. And those sound waves take 10 minutes to get to the ground or so. So you'll see this thing coming down, you'll see the engines, and then you'll hear this huge explosion. And maybe we think about that as a final salute to your loved ones, that they made it into orbit. And this sonic boom that we hear, that's a final salute of everybody on board, wishing us well down on Earth.
Well said. What do you think about the transition from NASA and Air Force, Cape Canaveral, Kennedy Space Station, to a commercial spaceport? And what do you see in terms of the ability of national security missions, government science missions, and commercial missions all being able to share much of the same infrastructure? I'll tell you what I think. I think it's a tremendous salute to NASA and the Air Force for having built that infrastructure. I've always said that even back in my day of commercial rockets, when we were flying retired Minuteman missiles, we couldn't do anything without that U.S. government space program. And I'm wondering if you see the results today of those investments that were made in the shuttle era and even before that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Charles. The launch pads that the commercial programs are using, many of them are like the Titan pad we're going to be launching from on Wednesday. They're old vintage ones that NASA has used, and now commercial groups are using them. Our network of satellites, communication satellites orbiting the Earth, our tracking and data relay satellites that we use for communication. I helped deploy one of those on one of my missions. SpaceX and the other commercial companies are using that infrastructure. So I think the NASA and the Air Force has done a really good job building the space infrastructure, and that has allowed the commercial companies to come in and start utilizing it. So I think it is, like you said, a tribute to the Air Force and to the NASA team for everything that they built in the past that allow us to do these missions, commercially. And it's almost invisible,
Right.
You can't see behind the scenes, but we've got communication satellites, we got tracking systems, we've got range safety officers from the Air Force Space Command that'll be monitoring the launch. So we have all of this already in place that our commercial partners can utilize, and I think that'll just accelerate the success of the commercial programs.
It's really not us versus them. It's all of the above, and that's
all of us working together. Exactly right.
So we have a question from the audience, Mr. Youngblood.
Don, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Don, we all know that astronaut training is rigorous. Can you tell us about the hardest part of your training?
The astronauts will tell you how hard it is. They do not tell you how much fun it is. It is a lot of fun. The hardest part of it is just getting all of that information that you need to learn, getting it inside your head. Because, if I forget an answer on a math test and I get 95 out of 100, I still do pretty well. If I forget one small detail, in a space mission, it can kill us or impact, the mission dramatically. So the real challenge is just getting all that information in your head. And that's why it's like 4 years of training for my first flight, where we, practice and we just repeat things until it becomes second nature what we're doing. But all the training that we do, all the preparation, it is just so much fun. The only job better than training for space is actually flying in space.
Okay.
But I used to drive by the Johnson Space Center where I did most of my training on a Saturday afternoon, and I would drive by it and just shake my head and say, I can't believe they pay me to do this job.
Excellent. We have a question. Yes, sir.
Question for, I believe, Emily. She mentioned something about a polar ellipse. Is that right? Can you just expand on that?
Yeah. Just unmute. Okay. All right. Hopefully there's not too much feedback. Basically what a polar, I'm going to try to explain it very simply because basically what a polar orbit is, okay, if you look at a map of the Earth, if you look at, like, let's say the International Space Station, it orbits, I believe, from like west to east, which is it's a type of low Earth orbit, but it orbits almost like not around the equator, but like around the Earth, like sort of on the side. Like if you look at the Heritage Plate up there, that's more sort of like an ISS orbit, like a regular orbit. A polar orbit is more north to south.
So polar orbits are great for observation satellites, particularly resource satellites. If you think about it, you revisit the same spot on Earth every 3 or 4 days, depending, because the Earth is going like this and the satellite's going like this. The Earth is turning around underneath you. So if you're looking for crop growth or crop damage or anything that's dynamic on the planet, you want to look at the same spot, basically at the same equator crossing time. That's what a polar orbit is useful for. It's also great for spy satellites and other observations. We often go east because we're a secondary payload, and that's where the rocket is going because it's visiting the space station or some other sort of equatorial type orbit. So as a secondary payload, we don't have any, we fly along. But it's really interesting to understand the orbital dynamics. Don, at one point in the shuttle program, it's beyond talk, there was active planning of being able to get to polar orbits, but we had to go out of the West Coast for that. Wondering if you did were you there when they were actively thinking about flying Vandenberg launches?
No, as you said, we're going to do it out of Vandenberg, and this is mainly for some of our DoD missions. And but this was all pre-Challenger, before January of 1986. After the Challenger accident, they kind of shelved the idea of ever launching out of Vandenberg. And I joined NASA in 1988. It was about a year and a half after the Challenger accident.
Understood.
But I got to say, no astronaut has ever gone in polar orbit.
True.
So having the capability, my mind was already like racing ahead. Wow, what's that going to be like flying over the North or South Pole and the Aurora Borealis, the northern and southern lights that your loved ones will experience from up there. That's something I've only dreamed of. So I think that's a really great opportunity, really unique opportunity to go in a polar orbit.
Okay. I just want to add, if you look at the Millennial flight and the Ad Astra flight up there, they have polar orbits. They're going north to south. So, yeah, their trajectory looks a little different from the Heritage flight up there.
So we have a question from out there in Radio Land, as they used to say, asking for a comment on flying cremated remains versus flying DNA. And I get to handle that question. We introduced our DNA product, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 flights ago for a couple reasons. The first is not everyone chooses cremation as final disposition. And so we wanted to offer folks who don't choose that disposition an opportunity to fly their loved ones into space. And so we sought out and partnered with a DNA laboratory in Canada that was in the business. You've all heard of 23andMe and all of those things. So these guys said, you know, we can take a DNA swab and we can adhere it to a substrate, and you can fly that DNA substrate. And the difference is, interestingly enough, for cremated remains, we can only fly, because of the costs of spaceflight, a symbolic portion. If we had to fly all of the cremated remains, none of you would be here today because it would be too expensive. But in the case of DNA, with just a gram of material, we get 100% of the human genome. So we fly all of everybody, which I thought was appealing. The other thing is you don't have to be dead to fly DNA with us. And an awful lot of people love, particularly for our deep space missions, it won't be too long. Maybe we'll have Don back for this, where we'll be on the very first Vulcan Centaur rocket, and we'll be going to the moon, and we'll be going 300 million kilometers out beyond Mars or Venus, depending upon which quarter of the moon we launch in. And we'll have a permanent heliocentric orbit that's got the DNA of 150 folks, that becomes, if you will, the first human way station in space. So we're nothing if not creative here at Celestis. In about a year, we'll be talking to you about what I love, which is, I call it affordable, personal, interstellar transportation, where we digitize DNA and we broadcast it via high energy radio beams to distant planets in other solar systems that we think might have Earth-like planets around them. And so in that way, we can make humans truly interstellar travelers. And it's just amazing as you do, you know, I'm kind of strange, but I think about this kind of stuff. You know, I'm again, hats off to Elon and everything he's done and all of the current generation has done. But we aren't the first, they aren't the first people to talk about a multi-planetary civilization. Gentleman that I worked for early on, Dr. Gerard O'Neill of Princeton University, envisioned large-scale human colonies in space built out of lunar and asteroidal materials and powered by solar power satellites and energy. And as we begin to find ways, in my view, the only way to preserve Earth is to populate the universe and move humanity deeply into space. That's the kind of thing that gets me up at night going, yeah, we could do that. And won't that be cool? But all of it involves this human effort. Don is at the forefront of having actually been there. And I imagine, I'm going to put words in your mouth, that you wouldn't mind at the appropriate point in your career going to the moon or going to Mars or going beyond. And all of a sudden, we can symbolically lead the way and create that first wave of humanity out into outer space. Yeah. Don, do you have a comment?
I'm just pointing to my shirt when you talk about maybe I would be interested in going to the moon or Mars. I always wanted to go to the moon as a young boy. Yeah. I would still love to go there. And Mars, if I had the opportunity, I would be on board.
Absolutely.
So I'm with you.
Well, I think with Charles' little explanation that he just gave us there, we got so many wows and cools and whatever in the chat room, and I think we got a sale also. One guy is okay, dude. All right, Tom, I'm listening to you, Tom. We'll tell you where to send the check. All right, but that's just awesome how far this technology has brought us to with those incredible possibilities. At some point, and there's a question there, at some point in the room before we end this, we're going to go ahead and turn the camera around and show all you guys that are in the room here. I'm not sure how much time we have left.
We got 20 minutes.
Good.
Question. Sure. Quick question. You mentioned the Canadian company. What is the DNA turnaround from the swab to fly?
About a week.
So in theory, if I wanted to send my DNA with a loved one through this, is it possible?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk to you. We have on our Enterprise flight, which is a really cool mission we worked on with ULA on the Vulcan Centaur. We're literally going, as I was saying, depending on the quarter of the moon when we launch, we're either going 300 million kilometers inward toward past Venus or 300 million kilometers outward past Mars. We already have several folks who've given us the DNA, including Rod Roddenberry, the son of Gene and Majel Roddenberry, will be flying with Gene and Majel. That goes back to a promise I made Majel when we flew Gene the first time. She said, Charlie, I'll let him go with you, but you have to make a deal when it's my time. You've got to fly me and Gene together into deep space. And I said, absolutely. Not having any idea how I would do it, right? But that's being an entrepreneur, right? But we now know how to do it, and we have folks who are sending their DNA. We just recently bought a load of titanium-5, which is the metal that NASA uses to shield electronics in deep space so that the radiation doesn't destroy them.
Yeah.
Our capsules for DNA are made out of titanium-5 so that we aren't going to guarantee that your DNA will be around for 100 million years, but it'll be around a lot longer than it would be if we didn't do the titanium-5. So yeah, that's a very real mission for us. We do that. And again, it's the kind of thing that, I think the private sector can do. The reason why I chose to create Celestis is that when I started in space as a young man, we were the first company to ever fly a private rocket into space. We were Elon 40 years before Elon. Deke was our president. Well, lo and behold, along came the space shuttle, no harm intended, but they had in mind that they wanted to create America's space truck. And so they put in a pricing scheme that basically subsidized the shuttle and put all of us little private companies out of business. So then I moved to a commercial remote sensing business where, again, Deke and several of us put together one of the early mini satellites to do remote sensing for commercial markets. We had a problem. The government, NASA, was giving away imagery as a means to justify Landsat. So then we filed the first ever, you hear about all these LEO constellations. Well, we filed the first ever plan at the FCC for low Earth orbit constellations. But along came the government with GPS and other things, gave it away, and we couldn't compete. So why did I end up in the space funeral business? I said, NASA's never going to do that. They're not going to compete with me on doing that. And lo and behold, shortly thereafter, they flew Clyde Tombaugh to Pluto. But fortunately, by that time, I had a good friend who was the top assistant to the administrator of NASA. And he said, Charlie, we're not going to do that anymore. You've got this. So as a commercial guy out there, this little 8-person company trying to take on the USG, that gets old really quick. So there's no greater fan of NASA, the government missions, the space shuttle, all of the amazing work that's done than me. But there's also, you're looking at a guy that has been knocked down about 3 times with my great business idea. Oh, no, we're just going to give that away because why? We have to get Congress to fund us. So that's all changed quite a bit now. And I think we're at an era of private-public partnerships. There's no way the private sector can do everything that's going to be done in space. Conversely, there's no way the government can do. There's only so many dollars that will ever flow to the U.S. government space program. And fine, for years we were like, you should be welcoming us. You should be saying that every dollar that the private sector spends is a dollar that NASA can spend somewhere else. Well, that job took about 25 years to take hold. But today, I think it's a great time. I only wish we still had space shuttle. And, I think I'm not sure about SLS, but it's there. It's going to fly. Let's back it. Would I rather be spending money on government space transportation or on some other things that the government spends money on? Government space transportation all the way. So I see an era. It's a great time to be in the business, and I think it's a great time to be in the government. We're doing amazing things in space, and they're just beginning. And that's what's so cool. Many of you heard me say I used to have to wait, in some cases, 7 years to get a launch. Think about poor Charlie in business saying, yes, we understand your grief. We understand you've lost someone and that you want to fly that person on a memorial space flight. We'll get back to you in about 7 years when you can fly. That's not a sustainable business model.
Right.
Today, thanks to everything NASA has done and everything the private sector has done, we can do it all. And that's just unleashing the power of our creativity in the private sector. And it's building an enormous justification for spending our tax dollars in space. I'm going to turn it back over to Don and let him make a comment.
Yeah, I want to add to the gentleman's last question on the DNA and the possibility of having DNA on any of our flights. Well, I have a friend who went on and did his DNA. His DNA is actually traveling on the Enterprise flight. And he got his sample back and showed it to everyone. And it was in a box, and in a box. And once he opened that container, that box with his sample of the DNA, it blew my mind just based on the packaging alone. It illuminated when you open that. It was something out of science fiction. And this was DNA, guys. And in a small, what do I call it, vial or glass container or whatever that is. And the way it was packaged was like, holy mackerel, I've never seen anything like this before. So just alone, what you get back, even though it is going to travel out as far as is worth it. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's a good point. Everybody that flies DNA also gets a home banking kit. And that's the same as you get from 23andMe or other people, that you can do analyses of what diseases you might get, genetic family tree type stuff. So we also provide that as part of the product. Don,
back to Don.
We are
Hello, Don.
Closing in on the end of our first visit with you. We're really looking forward to you being with us tomorrow. And I know, as I said, you're going to have 160 fans there. And by the way, for those of you interested, we have Don's book on display here. And if you want to get a copy, he's agreed to sign some autographs tomorrow. And my collection of autographed astronaut books is about to grow by one. But Don, give us some concluding or final thoughts for our group here tonight.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate. I'm lucky to be a part of your program here, Charles, and I'm really looking forward to meeting the family and friends tomorrow. It is going to be an incredible, emotional moment to watch the launch for everybody. I think just watching any launch, you go through a range of emotions, from people laughing and cheering to crying, and I can only imagine on Wednesday it's going to be all of that, and then even more so. I'd have to talk to my wife. What is it like to watch somebody, who you love, launching to space? I've never watched one of my loved ones going, so I don't know that experience, but my wife can tell me about it. Yeah. And I think you're going to see a whole range of laughing, crying, cheering, all rolled into one. And I just look forward to sharing that with you tomorrow at the memorial service. So we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Very much so. So we have time for one more question from the field, which I'll take, which asks about, have we given any thought to Celestis hosted DNA residency on private space stations? And as someone who was turned down by the Russian Orthodox Church from bringing cremated remains to the International Space Station, yeah, I've tried everything. And we got all the way, we got the contract signed, we were ready to go, but the Russians controlled the port of entry, if you will. And the Orthodox Church said, no, we're not going to have that. So I shifted my thinking to private space stations, of which there ain't any yet, but there undoubtedly will be. And yeah, we've given some thought to it, but that's too close. If I want my DNA 300 million miles out in a heliocentric orbit, I think that's a cooler outpost, if you would. But we'll follow the market. If people want, if you will, an orbiting mausoleum at some point, we went through an exercise in the company where they forced me to write a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. And, in 10 years, we ought to be having our first Martian service. Not that we're going to contaminate Mars with cremated remains, which always amazes me. We're perfectly happy to spread remains on this lovely home planet Earth, and we don't consider that contaminating or anything like that. But people come after me, you're messing up the moon. I'm like, the moon is a dead planet. And we should be taking our celebrations and our memorials wherever we go. But so, I view Celestis as at least a 100-year company. I won't be with it quite that long. But wherever humans go, we'll be taking our rituals, we'll be taking our memorials, we'll be taking all of that with us. And we think we ought to be the ones to do it. So if there's a sufficient demand for what I would call an orbiting mausoleum, we'll look into it. And given what I know, having experienced for 30 years, if somebody's got a commercial space mission out there and they're looking for clients, my phone rings. We're the first one everybody thinks of because we're actually a real market. We're not a jump 10 steps and then we'll create a business out of it. We're here today and we do it. Secondly, we have the most benign payload ever invented. We have no thermal requirements. We have no electrical requirements. We have no requirements. Just give us a ride. And in fact, as many know, our payloads often serve as radiation protection or ballast. These satellites spin. They need to be properly balanced. And so sometimes they just buy lead and put the lead in to balance the spacecraft. We're paying ballast, and people love that. So our business will go everywhere. And I think our job for the folks that are sitting here tonight and the folks that are watching us from around the world is to always recognize the sacred and precious nature of our payload. So we don't ever just look at it as we're launching stuff. We always look at it, and those of you who have worked with Christiana and Antoinette on our staff know that we're with you for the entire journey. And that's what I think makes it special. And that's what's going to happen in 2 days, if you can believe it.
I love it when this man gets excited about his job. It's a sight to see.
It beats working.
Yeah. We are incredibly, I guess we're up on an hour. I'm not okay. We are incredibly grateful for the individuals in this room. And I'm going to turn this camera around. And this is not everybody that's in attendance here at Cocoa Beach right now. This is as many as we can fit into the room. So I'm going to spin this around, and if you guys can just wave at the camera, you are now part of this broadcast. And there may be some loved ones that are watching you right now going, there she is. But we are incredibly happy that you guys have joined us. And the best is yet to come, because for some of us that has been to a number of these launches before, I just enjoy being a spectator, just watching around. Sometimes I deviate from literally watching the launch just so I can see your faces, because it is worth that to me alone to see the joy that comes over your face. I'm really happy to be working for this man. I'm really happy for all the new friends that I've met. My God, Colby, Emily, all you guys that I haven't known. We've been, our last launch was virtual.
Yeah.
You know, so it's been 2.5 years since we've actually been in person at the Cape. And we are excited, just as excited as you are. And thank you for giving us the privilege and the honor of providing this service for your loved ones. We're doing the absolute best we possibly can. And for being day one, I hope so far you're satisfied. It only gets better from here.
And we have not exceeded our Ohio limits on representation.
Oh, man, you did this on purpose. I think people signed up immediately when they knew you were coming, Don.
Oh, yeah.
We can't wait to see you tomorrow.
I'm excited about it. It won't be long. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Appreciate everything that you have done.
This is the launch conductor in mission control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial Spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5, vehicles armed, 3, 2, 1, fire.